Hello, it's Serena, your host of Let's Talk Motivation. And today we have a special guest, Milisa Galazzi, and she also goes by Misa. Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And tell me what it is that Misa does. Because there's three things I have on your headline, but I know there's a lot more to you, Misa. So
Right.
tell us who Misa is.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here. And I have been an artist all my life. I was 4 years old when people would say, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" And I would say, "I already am. I'm an artist. Why do I have to wait? Why do I have to wait to be something?" And they would sort of pat me on the head and say, "Oh, that's so sweet." But really, I knew I was an artist from the very, very beginning. And I always knew that I didn't want to be a starving artist. So I wanted to have art and always be a maker and a creative thinker. And I always wanted to have a pay the bills job. So I have also really honed my education teaching young children all the way through college professor, et cetera. And I worked for my mom for 30 years. She started an early childhood school and a summer day camp in 1980 when I was 15 years old. And I was one of her first employees, and I helped grow the program and the pedagogy and the company. And she always said, "This is my business and you work for me. This is not a family business. You are not joining a family business. This is mine." And then in 2015, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And so we started to make a transition from her leadership and ownership to my leadership and ownership. And in 2018, she changed her mind, decided she wanted to continue to run the company until her last breath, which she did. And in a grand swoop, she actually fired me because I was getting very mouthy and very like, "Mom, what are you doing? This is crazy. You can't do this. You're dying. Like, we need to do." And she didn't like being pushed. And so she fired me and she hired my son to take over my role as camp director. And my son knew he couldn't do it by himself at age 22. So he turned around and hired me as his consultant. So in one day, I went from working for my mom to working for my son. And that was all in 2018. And one of the nice things about working for my mom and working as the camp director, I had 75 seasonal employees. And so there was a nice ebb and flow of the work throughout the season. So there was quiet months and busier months. And in the quieter months, I could really dig into my art practice. And now that when she actually did pass away, we found out from her will that that I inherited the company in full, which she wouldn't say to anyone. So 5 years ago or 4 years ago, I inherited the whole company. So now I have 100 employees and about 650 kids a day in the high season. It's on Cape Cod, which is where I grew up, and I live in Providence, Rhode Island. And my studio, which is where I'm talking to you from, is in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. It's about an 800 square foot studio space. And I do a lot of making here, thinking here, teaching here, writing here. And then I drive out to Cape Cod and deal with the business. And then I come back. So a lot of time in the car.
Wow.
And I'm also, as I was saying to you, before we started, I have two sons who are 27 and 29, and a husband that I've been married to for 33 years. And I feel like my mom practice and my wife practice is as important to me as my business practice, my education practice, my art practice. And I bring all of me to each of those roles. And I think that is a huge part of the through line through all of it is creativity and connection.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah. So that
Yeah.
was a long intro.
No, that's perfect though, because when we spoke earlier, right? We're as business owners, we are multifaceted. We have so many things that we're good at. And I know for myself, I was telling you that when I turned 50, I I'm an educator. I was an educator. I was a bilingual teacher here in San Antonio, Texas for many years. And I was a mom. Well, was. I am still a mom of three. I call them mini adults. I have an 18, 19, and 20-year-old. No, now
It's
they've all
funny.
changed.
I call that age puppy adults.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
like
that's
puppy
good. Yeah.
adults. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Mini puppy, I like both of those, but they're actually 19, 20, and 21. And it's funny that you say puppy because just the other day, the two younger ones were in Lubbock, Texas for a graduation. And I get this text, and my son goes, Mom, in all caps. And they always do that, and they scare the death out of me. And I'm like, What's wrong? What happened? And he goes, I fell. And I'm like, You fell? Are you okay? He goes, No, I hit my side. I was, and I'm like, What were you doing? He's like, I was pushing the cousin into the pool. And then a friend came and pushed me in the pool. And I'm like, Adan, can you please be careful? But I thought it was interesting that he's 19 and he's like, I'm okay. I'm like, Do you need to go see grandma? Grandma's there. I was like, Are you okay? Show me a picture. And he goes, I'm okay. I just wanted to tell you. And I'm like, I'm like, so they still like need
Mhm.
reassurance. They still need their mom every now and then. And then my 21-year-old is in Singapore. And and he's studying Mandarin and he talks to me more often than when he's in the
Mhm.
house. I don't
Mhm.
see him or talk to him for a couple of days. I'm like, "Where's Marco?" And now it's like, "Good morning, mom. Good night, mom. I'm at school, mom. Here I am, mom." Like he is checking in all the time and it's nice. My heart is full. But yes, at
Yeah.
50, I we'd been running the business and my husband's a real estate broker and I fired myself. I said, "Ron, I'm firing myself from the real estate business because I want to go all in on the insurance agency." And of course, he's like, "Okay, whatever you want to do, just tell me how I can support you." And I was like, "Okay." So, it's like we move from one space or one time in our
Mhm.
lives to another. And I feel like I'm in transition right now. So I
Mhm.
totally hear you.
Mhm.
My kids are mini puppy adults. My husband is, his business is doing well and it's kind of on autopilot. I did find him a virtual assistant though to help take my place so he could have more assistants because we don't really have employees. They're all contractors, the agents. So it's been nice. A virtual assistant has really helped fill my role so I can do my other fun stuff. So
Mm.
so I'm going to ask you a couple questions so we can get to know more about you and about what you're doing and what your goals are. So the first question I want to ask you is what inspired you to start your business or businesses? I know one of them was inherited. And what keeps you going when it gets
Mhm.
tough? You have a lot going on. So like
Mhm.
what and then you're in different cities, spaces, right? And having to travel. So what keeps you
Mhm.
going and what is it? What's the like end goal? Where are we going from here?
Yeah. Wow. Really interesting question for right now because
Mhm.
these are the questions I'm asking myself is because I inherited the company and I went from seasonal work to now it's full on full time 52 weeks a
Yeah.
year owning the company, dealing with all of the issues of company ownership and management, and leadership, and I see
Yeah.
leadership and management as sort of two different skill sets, that you need both at different times,
Yes.
and ownership is its own kind of thing. So what keeps me motivated right now is that, I made the goal to run this company, when I inherited it through COVID. It had to close down during COVID because it was a school and a camp, and there was a lot of deferred maintenance on the 4.5 acre campus, which had, three buildings, and a large swimming pool and lots of pavilions. And in the last like 10 years of my mom's life, she just wasn't able to keep up. So I inherited a business that was basically on fumes. The physical
Mm.
plant needed a lot of work, and the employees that stuck through COVID and through my mom's death were ragged. And there was a lot of emotional need, physical need. And so I am not afraid of hard work. So I think hard work motivates me. And I think the challenge of saying, okay, let's give it this thing my all, and let's see where we can be in 5 years. And there was, my work was kind of set out for me. It was very clear what needed to happen. We needed to raise funds, invest in the physical plant. I had to, the old bathhouse that my dad built in 1986 when we first put the pool in for the summer camp. We're licensed by the town of Brewster, and the town licensor came that spring to give us our camp license and said, this is the last year that I can license the pool because that bathhouse needs to be replaced. And so part of coming in was also designing a building, funding the building the building, which finally got its occupancy permit last November. So this is all I'm still like in the, the final stages of like putting that together. And meanwhile, I'm still making art, showing art, getting into coffee table books about my work and showing in national exhibits. And so, I think what motivates me, I said hard work, but I also think I'm very left brain and right brained. I have a very creative side, creative problem solving, creative making. And I have a very logical, linear, make the list, check the box. And so what motivates me, I think, is using full on all parts of my brain and all parts of my skill sets. Because there was a time when my son was running the company and my mom was kind of in hospice care, and I had a real back seat, and I was just in my art studio full time. And I felt like it wasn't enough. Like I was just using my hands and my brain, but it wasn't enough. And that's how I started merging, kind of merging all of this together instead of keeping things so separate. And I started writing a book, and the book is soon to come out, called Full Palette Human. And it's about all the things that we're talking about. It's how do we stay motivated? How do we put our best, how do we create our truest and most beautiful life for ourselves? And what does that look like? So
That's
I'm excited.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So when do you think that will be ready? The book will be
I
out.
would say sometime in 2025. I'm hoping sometime before the end of the year. Yeah.
Nice. Well, that
Yeah.
actually leads to my next question, which is community and legacy. So,
Mhm.
what kind of legacy are you hoping to build through your work?
So with my artwork, I always choose to use the most archival materials and to use kind of best practices, because I hope that my artwork far outlives me. And I hope that my grandchildren's children get to enjoy it and can live with it. And I think that when we make things with our hands, that's an opportunity to touch a future we'll never see. And my work is a lot about what has been passed down from generations before me. I use a lot of sewing and stitching and thread, women's work I have a very kind of feminist bent to my artwork. And I attach um, that the materiality of thread and sewing as literal connections, strings, connections to our past. And I also attach it to scientific ideas of mitosis, string theory. And so the work is both conceptual and literal.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that my artwork has a legacy. In terms of, I think as teachers, as educators, we touch the future when we're,
Yes.
educating and teaching. I think once someone learns something, whether it's learning to walk or swim, or whether it's learning to speak their own truth, or, if it's, I think that once you learn something, you can never go back. You don't like unlearn
Right.
it. And so
Mhm.
I think that the legacy of education is sort of built into the process.
Mhm.
Um, and because I've been hiring, mentoring, training 100 staff a year for now 30 years, I've
Wow.
really touched a lot of professional educators' lives who have gone on to teach other people. And so I think that the legacy of my education work is built into the people that I've worked with and touched. So that's art education, and then lastly, my children, my sons,
Mhm.
I mentioned that my artwork is sort of has a feminist bent, but I really, I felt like the greatest gift that I could, when I realized I was having two boys and that was it. We were only having two kids and it was two boys, and I realized I would never have a daughter. I don't have a sister. Now I don't have a mom. I live in a very male world. My dad, my husband, my sons.
Yeah.
I realized that the greatest gift that I could give to feminism is helping to raise men who were good men, that were feminist men. And my two sons, I think, are that. They are very, they love cooking, they love creating beautiful spaces to live in. They are very, they're very passionate. Guys, and I think that that is also a legacy. I think they're a different kind of men. They're not like macho guys.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that there's a legacy there too of like being a different kind of man.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's like so many pieces. And I did want to try to share your website because I was looking at it, and it's interesting that you said the sewing, and that my grandmother, who just recently passed away and she lived to be 101, that was her trade. Like she was a seamstress, a
Hmm.
creator, and I've inherited all her spools of thread. And
Mm,
I'm like, do not want to get rid of them. And actually have all the swatches of the dresses she's made over a century. I mean, she's been sewing since
mm,
she was a
tiny.
little
Yeah.
girl. She was probably 5, 6 years old, putting dresses together for her
Hmm.
sisters.
Hmm.
Um, and my mom was going through them, and she goes, "This was the dress she made me when I was pregnant with my sister." And she's like, "This is the dress she made me when I was 15 and did my first communion." We have all those pieces, and it's like none of us want to get rid of them. I said, "Mom, we need to make a quilt out of them. There's 6 grandkids now, on 4 boys and 2 girls, and she was just super influential. So that makes that like really makes my heart feel warm that you're doing that type of art. I'm going to see if I can pull it in because I think I can. Share a screen. Here it is right here. Let's see. Can you see it?
Yeah. Hmm.
Oh, and actually I was going through it because the names were really catching my eye, but does this have string, or is it which one has the string?
So the
It's the
string
first
theory.
one.
So if you go, yeah, so go along the top, there should be a pull
There it
down
is.
that says string theory. Yeah.
This.
So yeah, so
This.
these I call these shadow drawings, and it's white thread on white paper on a white wall. So actually the shadows are what the work is about, and the shadows to me are sort of a memory of people that are no longer with us. But I'm hand sewing on paper, so I'm almost making paper lace. And this is just one piece of paper, and then as I've worked I've worked with this series for about 15 years, and so they've gotten bigger and more complicated. Um, you should be able to, yeah, so that's two, and they start to vibrate when you have multiple layers of paper hanging on the wall, and multiple light sources. They kind of
Yeah.
vibrate like op art. You can't really tell what's figure and what's ground, like what's object and what's shadow. And so I'm also playing with the ideas of like what's not there is as important as what is there. And that, I think, is an idea about legacy, as you were saying, the idea
Mhm.
that, your grandmother has had a tremendous impact on your life and on your children's lives, and
Yeah.
she's no longer physically with us, but the objects of her life are with you. And so what's
So
there, what's not there, what's important, what gets remembered, what's forgotten, like these are all ideas that I play with in my art.
that
And
is so amazing. That's
thank you.
beautiful. It's really amazing. I'm I I don't like to say that I'm not artistic, but I don't have the eye as much as like my husband. My husband, he has art from when he was in early elementary, and he always was. I tell him all the time, you need to do some art like as your hobby or as your time, because and now the pieces of art that he had from when he was young, the kids put them in their rooms as like a
Mm,
as to display them, and one of them is of just his hand holding a pencil, and hands are so difficult to do, and it is the most, and it's on chalk, it's like charcoal,
yeah.
and it just comes out. I tell him all the time, and I'm like, you're 50 now, you need to do something more creative and fun and peaceful, and start to get him to do some art. But we're working on him. He's a busy man, he's always doing other stuff, but the kids love it. They're like, mom, this dad's super talented. I was like, I know, it's
Mm,
just the path didn't take him down that path.
yeah.
But I have another question for you.
Hmm.
When it comes to success, and
Mm.
it's considered like a real talk question in the podcast world. So I'm going to ask you, what's something people assume about your success that isn't true?
I think that people assume that my success comes easily to me, that,
Mhm.
that, well, you have such a great relationship with your husband, so your marriage is really easy. Or, you're so close with your children, so your sons must have been easy to raise. Or, you've gotten your artwork out into the world, so your art career must just be easy. And what I would say to that is totally the opposite. It is the successes that I have borne in my life are out of sheer hard work, like nose to the grindstone, and not necessarily working. It's about intentionality. It's about patience. It's about being willing to sit with the discomfort of when it's not working. And I think that I've really cultivated a an ability to sit comfortably in the discomfort of it's not working. Like
Mhm.
I know that this commuting back and forth twice a week and living in two places is not really sustainable for the long haul. Like
Yeah.
living in one place and running a business in the other. And but I'm okay right now with, I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know if we're going to sell one house and move there, or if I'm going to sell the business, and I just don't know. And yes, it's uncomfortable that I don't have the answers and I don't know, but I'm okay sitting in this discomfort of, yeah, this is hard. It's taking a lot out of me to commute so much, and I'm not getting the kind of exercise that I probably need or want because I'm spending a lot of time driving, and that's something I need to be thoughtful about. So when I get to one
Right.
place or the other, that's my time. Like I need to prioritize my exercise and health. Um,
Mhm.
but I think sitting with, did my kids make mistakes? Absolutely. Did they mess up? Yes. Did I sit with them and unpack? Okay, well, at what point did you know that you were making a bad decision? Or when did
Yeah.
I say success is the shortest distance between your last bad decision and your next good decision. Like
That's right.
that's the definition of success. So, like, at what point did you realize
Yeah.
that you had made a bad decision, and how quickly can you make a good decision after you realize that you've made a bad one? And I feel like that's the same is true in business. Like we can't know. We can't know what's going to work or not work until we try it and do it, and then we'll learn. And I feel like that's the same. um you know, I bring that to my art practice too. Like, what if? Well, what if I spent an entire year just sewing with white thread on white paper? I did that for a year. I just said, well, what if I did that? And what was born out of that was this entire 15-year inquiry into shadow drawings. And so
Wow.
sometimes when we ask, what if, and we sit with curiosity, then we end up in this new place. And
Mhm.
I think that success for me is not external. It's not how much money is in the bank. It's not the how fancy my car is. By the way, I drive a VW Golf, and I just took it in for an oil change this morning. It says
What
160,000
year?
miles on it,
Oh
and
my
I'm still
God.
driving it. You know, I for
That's
me,
awesome.
success, it's not about the stuff. It's not about acquiring. Success for me
Mhm.
is about um, the quality of my relationships and
Agree.
the quality of the work that I put out into the world, whether that's through my business or through the people I touch or through the
Mhm.
artwork that I make. Um, that's success is a very, to me, success is incredibly personal.
Yeah.
How do I define success at any given moment? And there are some days when I go to put my head on the pillow and I'm like, wow, did not feel successful today. Like, just bungled that meeting, made a bad decision on that. Wish I could have a do over in that conversation. I'll do that tomorrow. Like, got to the studio and was so exhausted. All I could do was sit and drink tea sitting on my couch. Like,
Yeah.
like that's what non-success looks like. And I also, I guess the last thing I would say about success in everything that I do, especially in my art career, I measure success in decades and lifetimes, not in days, weeks, shows,
Mhm.
sales. Like, success for me is about decades of work over time and what's been produced both physically and emotionally in that time period. You know,
Yeah.
it's, I think that's
That does sum it up. And so if you could go back and give your
mm,
younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
um I think I would say to myself to follow my curiosity more. Trust
Mm.
trust my curiosity. Trust the energy coming from inside me more, and spend less time worrying about what other people think of me or my choices or what I'm doing or how strangely, quote unquote, I'm putting my life together, or worrying that I'm not good enough or that I should be doing X or Y. If I were a real artist, I would do X, fill in the blank.
Right.
And spend more time quietly following my own energy, my own curiosity, my own truth, my own voice. And I think
Yeah.
I'm turning 60 in 2 months, and I feel like I've just begun in this last decade to hone that
Yeah.
skill of quieting the cultural noise, the familial noise, the
Mhm.
expectations of what I think I should be doing because of what other people see or think, or um and just being more confident with um who I am and
Yeah.
how I'm putting together my life. um
I
I think
agree.
that's been a push pull for a long time.
A long time. I agree with you. And I had that epiphany at 50
Yeah.
because I was always, mom, the organizer, the planner, the getting, making sure everyone had what they needed to survive their lives. And
Hmm.
then I, and then also being helping my husband build his business for many,
Hmm.
many years and being the operations and the backbone to that. he would be like, he'd come with me with ideas and I'd be like, okay, let's do it. And finally at 50, I said, no more ideas from you. Now it's all my ideas. I was like, it's my
Yeah.
turn. And
Yeah.
I finally feel like I have a peace. And I
Mhm.
see it in my kids because they're like, what's your schedule like now, mom? And I'm like, my calendar is full. I'm going to a networking event. I have XYZ meetings. Like right now, my husband just texted me and I said, I'm in a Zoom back to back. I'll let you know when I'm done. And they just have to survive without me, right?
Right.
Which
Right.
is learning,
Mhm.
especially being a hands-on kind of mom that I was. They're having to learn to
Mhm.
just be, and hopefully they see that, oh, look, mom built something after 50. My husband too, he's like, you tell me how I can support you. And he knows this journey is my next chapter
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
I just hired my husband. He retired after 40 years of teaching high school,
Wow.
and being a dean of students and college counselor. And so he retired, and I was like, how about 20 hours a week we could work together, and you could be my special projects manager or director, and it could be just be projects. Like I just give you this and you take it
Yeah.
from A to Z. And so we met working together. So it's been a return back to like how we first met. We,
Nice.
so and I think he's very excited to support what I'm doing, because there have been so many decades of me supporting the family. And
Exactly.
I just said to him this morning, he said, do you think you'll be a famous artist someday? And I was like, well, I think if I live to 90 or 95 and I'm still able to make art at that point, maybe, because I
Yeah,
think that's how it works for women.
that's right. Well, let me tell you, my grandmother was still driving at 98 and still sewing at 98. She could still thread a needle without her glasses. And yeah, and she would just like and put that thread through the needle, and she had customers that would come to her at 98 years old to hem their pants and hem their dresses. And no, but they didn't want to go anywhere else. So that was like
Amazing.
the hardest part for her, was not
Yeah.
being able to do what she loved. But
Yeah.
yeah, you will be. You never know. This podcast might make you famous. Famous.
Whatever famous is, I don't even know
Right?
what famous
I
is.
know. What is famous? What is famous? Well, I am so glad we got to talk and we got to share Misa's story and all the things that are coming. So
Thank
what
you.
are you thinking your mission is going from here? Like what's the next steps in the next year for you?
Yeah, I think when my book comes out, Full Palette Human, I'm hoping to get onto some bigger stages. I've done a lot of speaking to audiences of anywhere from 5 to 1,500, like high schools and colleges, and I'm hoping to continue to build my speaking career. And I'm hoping that the book and the speaking will kind of come together, and continue to run my company and continue to love my family and continue to make art. So,
Yeah.
and I hope to get some sleep in there
Yes, and exercise, and
and
exercise.
exercise. Right, exactly.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Well, thank you
So
so
yeah,
much for being here. Thank you for being a
thank
guest, and
you.
make sure you send me the link to your book when it goes live or when you're
Okay.
ready, or any speaking engagements, because I can put that in the comments and share it with our viewers, and that way they can find you. Because I definitely want to read Full Palette Human. Right? That's the name of the book.
Yep, that's the
I'm
name of the book.
excited. I think it's going to be definitely a bestseller. Thank you
Oh,
so
thank
much.
you so much. I appreciate it. And
And
I look forward to staying in touch.
yes, and I will find your Texas twin. I don't know where she is, but I know there's someone down here that looks a lot like you and
Uh,
reminds me of you. That's so amazing. So,
uh,
okay, we'll talk again.
okay.
And thank you so much, Misa.
You're welcome. And thank you, Serena. Bye.
Bye.